Hello. We're going to get started. Thank you so much for coming down to First Experience tonight. My name is Bex. I'm on the events team at Bookstore Magic, which if you don't know is a small independent bookstore just a few blocks down on Montague. We are so excited to have you all here to celebrate All Fours by Miranda July. Conversations together. Before we get started, we just have a few housekeeping notes to go over. First, I'd like to thank First Unitarian for hosting us all in this absolutely amazing space. If you need the restrooms, they are just out the doors to the house right, to your left. Go figure it out. We'll be doing a hand raise Q&A at the end that will run around with a microphone, so think of your questions. Follow them tight. We will get some of them answered. Afterwards, Miranda will be signing and personalizing books on the stage here. We gave you Post-it notes. Put those on your book, because it'll make things easier. And if you're joining us virtually on the live stream, you can buy a copy of All Fours online using the link in the description. Presumably, you have all read about All Fours because you bought tickets or exist. And so instead of reading you the spiel from Eventbrite, I'm just going to read my own shelf talker for the book. In All Fours, Miranda July wants to tell you her thoughts, and it is in your greatest interest to sit down and listen. It is a book on art, queerness, menopause, and family, co-starring a non-binary child and featuring a whole lot of love. Having a body is so hard, but when July writes about sex, masturbation, and love, she makes me so glad to have one. By the way, if you haven't already, tonight we're so excited for Miranda July, the writer, filmmaker, and artist. Her most recent book is The First Bad Man, and her collection of stories, No One Belongs Here More Than You, which we both have available for purchase where you checked in, won the Frank O'Connor International Short Award and has been published in 23 countries. Her writing has been featured just about everywhere, and she has written and directed many films, including Future, Me and You Never Really Know, and Cajillionaire, which is all watch if you haven't already. Gia Tolentino, our wonderful conversation partner, is a staff writer at The New Yorker, the author of the essay collection Circular, which we also obviously have for sale in the back. Formerly a deputy editor at Jezebel and contributing editor of The Hairpin. She grew up in Texas, has her undergraduate degree from the University of Virginia, MFA from the University of Michigan, and in 2020 received the White Award. She lives in Brooklyn. Without any further delay, please join me in giving the warmest welcome to Miranda and Gia.
Hi everyone. I'm Miranda. I'm truly so happy to be here with all of you and for us to talk about this novel, which I was saying is the breaking my all-time record for the number of friends who have stolen my galley out of my house from under my nose. It is the most exhilarating reading experience I've had in a long time. So funny, kind of unbearably intimate and beautiful, and I'm really excited to talk to you about it.
I'm so glad it's here.
Okay, so the book, I know that y'all might not have read it yet. It's the last chapter, or the last section begins on the day of a book launch in Brooklyn. So we are in the novel right now. I hope we can all enjoy that feeling. There's also another part of the novel where the narrator is in a room with a much more famous artist who has them pat each other down to sort of regulate the vibes and establish true intimacy without sex as soon as possible. I was wondering, should we do that here?
Oh, wow. I didn't even know this. It's my first time, so, a first book event. And never, I didn't, let's do it. It includes breasts. And the crotch. That's part of it. And then turn around. It's a little like TSA, but like...
It feels so much better.
Yeah.
That was wonderful. The area I wonder is this something that maybe non-famous people could do with each other too? And I thought, I think yes, I think it's a great idea.
Right, it's the thing, like, you know how after you have sex with someone for the first time, suddenly it's like there's this casual this feeling between you. It's like how you get to that without sex. Yeah.
And that's what I was going for. Okay, so I knew I would have an incredibly intense relationship with this book from this couple of lines which occur really early. It goes, my friends are always obliging me with ephemera like this, screenshots of sex, emails to their mother, because I'm forever wanting to know what it feels like to be other people. What were we all doing? What the hell was going on here on Earth? Of course, none of these artifacts really amounted to anything. It was like trying to grab smoke by its handle. What handle? And so, yeah, the book just first and ultimately seems to me to be about this. Like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, are we experiencing even a tiny fraction of what is possible? More specifically, the book is asking, like, is the devotion that we direct towards partnership and family and even work, is that a consecration of our potential, or is it the thing that drops an anvil on our potential for off-script desire? And what do we do about the fact that it's usually a little bit of both? But I wanted to ask you, what was your understanding of what this book would be about when you started it at the outset, and what is it now? How do you explain it? This book contains a lot.
Just hearing all the sounds. Or not that sound, I mean, people coming to my reading, event. I don't have hostility to back when it was just a file, an Evernote called Novel 2, you know, kind of hopeful, maybe there'll be another one. The notes that I would put in there were like things about aging. You know, I was in my early 40s, and I was just getting kind of an uneasy feeling about what was coming, which is weird for me because I'm like a very excited about the future, let's make it up kind of person. And so stuff about aging and femininity specifically, marriage, like I had some idea, like there was one note that was like maybe a Lord of the Rings style book about marriage. It's like it's all very mundane, but the stakes are that high, you know. The thing you're trying to get is sort of, what is it, you know? Like, and some like sort of earth trauma, just trauma stuff in the body, desire, like just the kind of like drugged out, can't sleep, masturbating all the time, kind of. And so I didn't know what the story was yet, but I let these notes accumulate, and in my proposal, you know, I had fragments of dialogue, some of which did end up in the book. I looked at it just recently for the first time, and I'm like, well, that's not, all this stuff is completely insane, but you know, yeah.
Well, so the story that these ideas coalesce around is the narrator. She bears a lot of autobiographical resemblance to you. She's an artist, multidisciplinary success, considers her work to be a never-ending conversation with God. She thinks she's queer. She writes voraciously about transgressive sex, lesbian sex, but she spent much of her adult life in a relationship with a man, taking care of their child. And your narrator has, and there are these descriptions of this that I found kind of unbearably intimate when I was saying these. She has these profound reserves of existential hunger and desire, desperation, which she curtails every day as soon as school ends and it's time to build a block tower and, you know, make enough protein waffles to get through breakfast for the rest of the week. She's just turned 45 when the book starts. She's gotten $20,000 from a whiskey company, which is licensed just one sentence she wrote years ago, which was about hand jobs, but is the repurposed to be about whiskey. Something that, can you say what the sentence is in your life? Not that you're the narrator, but.
Yeah, I did out myself recently in an article. The sentence is, well, you gotta picture the little Johnny Walker walking guy. Don't wait to be sure, move, move, move.
the story begins when she's ostensibly going to go on this road. She's going to go to New York. She's going to spend this $20K on this luxurious trip in New York where she's going to stay at the Carlisle. She's going to go see art, see music, plays, whatever. And she's road tripping there to see if she can finally become this sort of grounded, capable, chill person that she believes, it is incumbent upon her to be. Of course, she doesn't make it to New York. She barely makes it out of Los Angeles, and the course of her life changes drastically when she meets a white hip-hop dancer named Davey who works at a Hertz car rental. Can you describe what Davey does to her body and brain?
Yeah, it creeps up on her because he seems like a sort of silly person or something. But yeah,
Let's trade for now.
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
Yes, it does that to her. Yeah, the section where I describe, where she describes it as sort of like wanting a body. It was the first time wanting a body brought her to her knees, and it was like a wound that you just have to live with for the rest of your life. So there's a kind of gravity to it, and just, well, guess what? She actually has remarkably time because she's supposed to be on this road trip. So, yeah, she spends it with him.
Yeah. Maybe the battery is out because it keeps going. We'll see. It's fine. Yeah, at one point she's longing for him, and the red light keeps switching off. I think everyone can still hear me, but
It's not as good.
it's not as good. Okay, now it's
Do you want this?
we can just go back and forth forever, as a great artist once said. Yeah, I think there's one point where she's thinking about Davey and she's crying and she describes the open whale of her mouth is open, the place where the dick should be. One of the many places where I laughed out loud, rare in brilliant fiction. Yeah, your descriptions of her sex life previous to this are sort of worryingly indelible to me. Like she, in her previous life, she initiates sex, but it's often because she can hear her husband's dick whistling like a tea kettle. And previous to dating, she's having sex so sort of strapped to various fantasies that, and she tells her best friend, it's like she's, fantasies about stepfathers and college girls, that she tells her friend it's like she's having sex with a screen clamped to her face. But with Davey, she's rooted entirely in her body for the first time in her life, and I wondered if you could read just the little part on page 122 about how she's here.
I should just, She's rooted in her body, but it's all a fantasy. You know what I mean? Like they're not actually having sex. So that's, Okay. This here, if life was completely incredible, if every moment was a perfect 10, then we'd all be totally present all the time. I know because the past and the future were of no interest to me in Monrovia. That's where he is, in the Hertz, in the motel. Thinking about them seemed like a waste of now. When I wasn't with him, I just luxuriated in my beautiful room, sleeping late and anointing myself with having orgasms and listening to music and eating only the foods that appealed to me. Hot dogs and puddings and orange popsicles and things with peanut butter on them. Sometimes I watched a TV show or read a magazine. I didn't work or try to think of an idea for my next project. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't tiptoe or walk on eggshells. My system of grit, then release didn't apply here. It was all release. I was happy. Only sometimes, when I first woke up, I had thoughts in an entirely different voice. It was cold and unimpressed. It said, "What are you doing? You're betraying your husband. You missed your child."
don't have to.
Yeah. But I'm going to skip ahead. We're going to skip one part, and then, pass that right in. Okay. This is nothing, the voice said. None of this is anything. Why are you hanging out with a stranger? It was chilling that some part of me was unmoved by Davy, but it seemed to indicate that there was a core self in there. Someone was leaving the light on for me should I ever have to retrace my steps and find my way back. In the meantime, I could push deeper into the woods without worry of getting lost. Then at some point, without my noticing, the voice stopped.
So like you said at the beginning, this occurs in the context of midlife, and a lot of this novel is about this perimenopausal period, and this terrifying idea that is growing in the mind of the narrator, that maybe all of life has been rising to this midpoint, and soon it will start falling. Soon the midpoint will be reached, and it will start falling towards this known end. We don't know what the first part's going to be, but we know what's going to happen at the end of the second part. And she thinks maybe falling might take just as long as rising, but it was nothing like rising. And so, the part of this book that's about midlife is it affects desire and desirability for women, and following from that a sense of identity and self. The narrator thinks at one point, so much of what I thought of as femininity was really just youth. A line that chilled me to my bone. She panics, right? An 80-year-old man wakes her at a party and she's like, is this how hot you are? Is this how old you have to be to think I'm hot now? She finds a terrifying graph on the internet about her hormones and how the estrogen is going to drop off a cliff and maybe her sex drive will go with it altogether, just as she has discovered the depths that it can bring her to. I wonder if you can just talk about writing the first-rate perimenopause novel. There's a void of, as we were just saying back there, it's people don't even know what this is.
Right.
Tell me about this part of it.
Yeah. It was so weird, right around, so I was gathering the notes, right, novel 2, and the feeling was like all the imagery and storytelling and all information about the body just kind of stopped right around this age, and which was weird because just so recently in my 30s there had been so much involvement in my reproductive system, and then suddenly I was having to hunt for basic facts, and there just weren't that many. It just kind of tapered out, as if my work here was done, and it's I kind of intellectually knew that, women's lib, and this is where we are in feminism, but it made this kind of grim feeling, and I didn't, part of me was is it just that it's so humiliating what's coming? Sorry, but it kind of is, and it basically sucks. And that's why we're not talking about it, almost out of respect. You know what I mean? We'll spare you having to read about yourself in this. We'll just pretend that you're kind of like you were, only older, unfortunately, But meanwhile, me and all my friends were having really intense, exciting conversations about our bodies and our desires and our marriages, and we were radically questioning everything in a way that hadn't happened before, and surprising women would be questioning things, women who I thought were going to hold down the ship were not holding down the ship. The woman with 3 children, and I was well then what about me? Things like that. It's all a whisper network. You know what I mean? Forgetting the question here, and my excitement about the whisper network. But anyways, I'll just say that I put that all in the book, and the feeling was kind of the stakes are very high here, just judging by the fact that there's nothing here. I don't know what be killed. I don't know what the problem, what happens, but I'm not alone. Like that I know for certain.
Yes, the narrator is wrestling with this, and at one point, this has been quoted in, I think, a bunch of reviews. She's trying to film a sexy video, and she thinks, she's looking at her butt, and she says, it was like when you can't find your purse and then realize it's been stolen. My butt was long where it used to be rounded with a pair of fat arms. There was a tushy on my front side, below my belly button. And there's a turning point in the novel in order to, she has a breakthrough moment at some point. And I wondered if you could read the sort of reverie on 210. I guess maybe I can say this without spoiling it. She has to not just sort of accept that the future is coming, but literally kind of fuck it. She has this, and she has this amazing sexual encounter that leads into this.
Okay, right. Now it's nighttime, it's late at night. I walked with giant strides and marveled, almost laughing that I gotta not read that last until the spoiler. Something had happened that you'll read about. I sashayed down the middle of the street with the moon and almost ball above me. I scanned the lit windows, hoping someone might witness me out here, alone and so free. I turned a corner and spotted a woman getting out of her car. She was rummaging in her trunk now. Would she look up? She did, an admin type with gray curly hair. But briefly, she was focused on the thing in the trunk. Perhaps it was some black leather belts, a slithering mass of them. That refers to something else. Skip. Or something else, something I couldn't picture. It seemed unlikely that my entire view of older women could be changed by Audra. On the other hand, people were always referring to the one person, the gay teacher, the animal rights activist, who had changed everything. Wasn't this the great hope and folly of humans, that we were all so influenceable? Not weak or flimsy, but actually interconnected at the root level, like trees. We took everything personally because it was personal. I'm gonna skip that. Okay, this is probably where I'm starting to read. Can I continue? Please. Okay. It was 2 a.m. I'd left the known world and hadn't died. In fact, I felt fantastic. Was this the secret to everything, this bodily freedom? It felt intuitive and healthy, as if promiscuity was my birthright as a woman. Maybe it was. Was this the skeleton in civilization's closet? The reason why men had come down so hard on us since the start of time? I had the urge to call my mom and tell her the good news. But no, it was too late in every way. The moon, so huge. It suddenly seemed natural and sweet to fuck all my friends, but also my lawyer, who I couldn't remember the face of because we only communicated through email. And everyone else I worked with, regardless if they were someone's assistant or the head of a company. What better way to understand other people's realities? I should have sex with both my parents, of course. It was only a matter of time. And obviously my cousins, wherever they were, should all be fucked. I lamented the relatives who had already died before we could share this tenderness. Children weren't a part of this, but the parents of Sam's friends should be brought in, especially the mothers I had nothing in common with. Fisting would cut right through the politesse. And who else? Like God making a new civilization, I tried not to leave anyone out. Just a little. Okay. 45 minutes later, I was still walking. I no longer wanted to fuck everyone in the world. I was noticing, now I wanted to eat the world like a giant fruit. I wanted to go to other countries, yes, but also how come when I dropped Sam off at school, I always hurried home even when there was no emergency? What was keeping me from taking a different exit? Why didn't I throw themed parties or run an artist salon? I should have a lover, sure, but also other specialized relationships. Someone who I only cried with, someone for mutual back scratching, artistic pilgrimages. I could be the part-time child or pet of a lonely adult. How interesting for both of us. And each of these people could be anyone from any walk of life. I had always done this kind of thing, but in secrecy, Davy, or in my work. Harmless make-believe, or while belittling myself, what a kook, when really this was no trifling matter. A person with a journeying, experimental soul should be living a life that allowed for it. The past wasn't my fault. Of course I'd been using prefab structures, not knowing any better, but now I was older and I could see my new path clearly, extending from tonight and ending when I died. I get it. I whispered into the darkness, and thank you. I added, because we hadn't talked in a while.
You guys are listeners, part two trees. Every page is like this. So yeah, one of the things with this novel, so the journey then becomes about, is there a way to blow up your life without completely blowing up your life? Is there a way to make the protein waffles and have transcendence too? It's some of my favorite, you were saying that, you're having these conversations with your friends, and this is some of my favorite parts of the book. The narrator sort of starts talking and realizes that everyone, and she also has particularly great friends, that everyone is practically negotiating these sort of life or death stakes of existence all the time. I wonder if you could talk about that more. I guessed when I read this book that maybe that those conversations and this sort of journey had perhaps in your life predated the book's writing. There's this great profile of you at the New Yorker where you kind of talk about how the book almost prompted it out of you.
Yeah, this book is different from anything else I've ever made, really, and that it couldn't just be one fictional person's story. It's like with some...
I don't know, did you feel like you were formally trying to answer this sort of emotional question?
Oh, yes. When you were talking, I was like, it was so hard. It was like...
Something has to come after.
Yeah, and well, also like it was like a thrilling experience because the stakes felt so high. I mean, the normal grandiosity that you have writing a novel, but then I actually did feel like it can't just be a story. You know what I mean? Like that's not going to help me or anyone. Like you have to figure out something. Yeah, and some of that, I guess some of the sort of trick of that almost is you have to include, like when you talk about the second half of life being falling, like I've had this, so you have to include, to finish the thought, which I'm trying to do more these days, you have to include the fear and the naivete and the things that, we don't admit, like we're smart women, like really we're afraid of aging. Like my mom seemed fine with it and her radical, you know what I mean? Like I don't understand why I'm not better. So some of it is admitting all that up front, her being just exactly how she is and making her maybe even a little more like that than me, just to be like, all our welcome here. There's why would that be dumb of you to have that fear given everything? Like, I promise you, the whole world has worked in an effort to make sure you're concerned about that. And so saying that, and then, okay, this is the thing I was going to say was, how on Instagram, especially now they have like a quote from a book, but it doesn't say the book or the character or anything, it just says Miranda July. So you can have, so it's like, oh great, it's now going to be like, my butt looked like fat arms, Miranda July. That was one of the many anxieties about putting that stuff, and that is also why you don't do that as a smart person, is because now, in this day and age especially, you can be quoted out of context, and that could be really bad. And then, but of course, part of my job was to be like, so be it, I have a bigger project, and and then living from there, and then writing from there, and there was a whole version of the book that was essentially that New York Times Magazine cover story called Women Have Been Misled About Menopause. I wrote that. And there was a point where I was like arguing with my editor that really this whole novel could just be an informational pamphlet. And I was truly like crying. This was like a dark time, and she had explained to me, and I wrote down, people like novels. They enjoy the journey. I had that by my computer for about half a year.
Okay, I'm just gonna ask you one more question because time has flown and you'll have 15 minutes to ask questions. But so I was gonna bring this up. The novel is absolutely blindingly fearless, but the protagonist is beset with fear. At one point she describes like making a problem out of every moment, sort of, why wouldn't you? Because when you're able to not, you have the grandest sort of freedom in the world. And again, I was like, ugh. But, you know, I wanted to ask you, your tone is so finely calibrated, even though it's so, I have no idea how you calibrate the tone that you do here, that does everything all at once. And I wanted to ask, what were your fears in writing this book? What do you have to control? What did you have to carefully control and calibrate in order for this book to accomplish, to come out the way you want, to come out like this?
Yeah, one of the pieces of that, it took, 4 years for the whole thing, so it was a while to find it. One piece was writing a lot of things as if we were all in agreement, as if like nodding, as if this had been said before. When in fact I knew it hadn't because I was quite scared to say it. But that kind of writing as if this moment had already happened, not this one, the one where you've already read it, and at least a fair number of you are like, yeah, I know what that means. Like, I didn't have that, and that's what I was looking for. And so a lot of the time I had to psych myself up, and often with the help of my friend Isabel, who the book is dedicated to, it was like the confidence to be insecure and unknowing, but not in a weak way, you know what I mean? Like if you know you're not alone, it has a different quality to it. I think also, early on there was, if I'm totally honest, there was some fear about linking myself with this whole topic. Like, just perimenopause, menopause, just the sheer...
Gorgeous word.
Just the sheer fact of like, I'm 50 now, and like, you can kind of be nebulous about your age for quite a while if you don't like write a whole book. And so, I actually, in the very beginning, despite all those notes in novel 2, I would sit there and I would have to think through, okay, what is the reward of not doing this? That is, like being graceful about it, because I could see a lot of women I admired really just writing about important things and being graceful and not worrying about this and this kind of small potatoes topic. And the only thing I could come up with, truly, for not writing about it, was that I would be ignored less meanly. You know what I mean? Like, whereas if I made a fuss and wrote it all down and made it quite clear, like I'm not the young person that I was, now I'm this, and these are the things I'm thinking about, and I thought, okay, well, first of all, that reward of being ignored less meanly, I'll take my chances then, and also I thought, well, I'll get to have this conversation. And that conversation with other women and other people who feel this, I don't think are, it affects everyone. That's the kind of thing that could actually see me through the whole rest of my life. could actually make each day better. And guess what? I'm only going to get older. This is the youngest I'm going to be. So that seemed like, oh, I can fucking risk all, you know, because that's what's on the other side. And I'll just place all my bets on that.
Well, we're very lucky. So I think it's question time.
We have time for 3 questions. So go on to the person's currently closest.
Hi. I noticed that a common theme in your work is fantasies, and I was wondering if fantasies matter.
Do they matter, fantasies?
Yeah, are they important?
Right. Well, I wonder about that in the book, and there is, I mean, I think all of my work kind of comes out of getting through childhood by fantasizing, you know, like, I managed to turn that around into a job, you know, but it really was a kind of, a sort of disassociation, you know, like in the most negative sense, and kind of wonderful. But I did feel, and this is addressed in the book pretty head on, that I think there's a danger to it, and it's, I'm not going to say it because I think you're on to something here, and I would like to refer you to the book. Sorry.
Memoir / question mark thoughts on memoir for memoir writers and your work and why not memoir, etc.
Great. Well, I love reading memoir, and I love knowing that, like, this really happened. You know, it ups the stakes, the urgency, like, I eat it up. I don't do well in that realm. Like, the truth comes out more true when I have fiction. And when I do it, when I hew too closely to reality, it's like somehow I lose what really mattered in it. So I can't do it, but every time I read it, I think I can. So it's, yeah, hats off.
I'm going to go towards the back.
When you were writing the book, did anything new come up or shift for you that changed the way you think about writing all fours, that you originally set out to do? If that makes sense.
Yeah. God, so many things. I mean, sometimes I felt like, is this taking years because I just need to live? You know, as much as the memoir question is true, it's also like, I didn't want to be the person I was at 45 when I finished the book. I wanted the brain that had learned something. I mean, one really just sort of practical thing, like remember when I thought it could be a pamphlet? A book came out called What Fresh Hell Is This? Specifically about perimenopause, and it sort of woke me up. I was like, well, obviously people are going to want to get their facts from a professional, not Miranda who was not known for medical, I actually hunted down that writer and called her, and deep pandemic, sort of trying not to, she can't tell I'm crying because it's the phone. And I'm writing a novel about some of this stuff, and she was just like, how lucky are you that it's a novel? And you don't have to, adhere to the truth. And also she's like, so many people are going to read that, this is a different kind of book, and that was a big deal for me, that coming out. And that also just shows us, not that there weren't other books, but there was no book written by a, very relatable, queer woman. Just, that was the book I wanted on that topic. So it shows you where we are in history, you know, and things did begin to change over the course of it, like the NIH, like the healthcare system in England, started just covering hormones, you know, like we are too fucked up healthcare-wise to even like have a conversation that might lead to prescribing, much less paying for anything. But that was a big change. I was like, whoa, what? Like, that indicates something so big. So there was that. I don't even know who I'm just talking to. There was that. That sense that, like, from a very alone beginning, like I was just picking a topic that was so ugly, that's why no one wrote about it, because it's icky and you're icky, and, you know, that feeling started to shift even before the book had come out, and that affected me, and that made me feel more confident and kind of urgent, yeah.
Thank you. That is our evening.
Really was so excited about you doing this, but the second you started, I was like, oh, this is not easy, and the way you said, this is something I would say right after that. The way you set it up, but you ruined it, and you really took care of everyone and me on the book, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. Reminder, you can buy more books in the back. Miranda will be signing on stage here. The line is going to come along this side. Grab your items.
This is such a good audience. Everyone is great.
So thank you for coming.
I'd love to see a lot of it. Also, I will say it's true. I love this video, but the creaking is loud. Like I was like, like. Should I go over there? This food is so good. So good to meet you. So good to meet you. Thank you right into that. I laughed. You have it amazing. Yeah, thank you. It was magical, like turning 45 while it's raining, and I have like one kid that's from California, and I was like, oh my, like I'm like, I need to go to Monrovia. Yeah. And then we're gonna make her get in and start signing the like shit. It's beautiful. I never see that. This is testament to Miranda, though. I'm like, oh wow, it's brought the whole